Completely different rift, but Wukong is still here obliterating it. Unfortunately, we can't do a true solo because in the devices, there's no sort of immunity buff anywhere, so we'll just use Christy with her F-Res instead. Her buff giving her 100% of her F-Res to the backline makes Wukong immune to all debuffs, which will basically be immunity buff. For the devices, we're going to be using these ones. The first one, this one is one that we haven't really used yet, but you need some sort of tentacle removal. The tentacles make the boss do so much damage. Like, you could probably maybe go without this, but it's hard to make sure that you don't get one-shot by the boss S1, especially on a bruiser build. You could make your Wukong super tanky though, and potentially you don't need this, but I think this is fine to use. And also removing tentacles helps you deal more damage anyways. The second one, we might as well use this one. Wukong will be skills on regardless because S3 does so much damage, and we'll take the free greater attack buff. This third one, none of them work, so it doesn't matter. And the fourth one, this one just helps speed it up a ton, decreases counter force by 10, and then when you have heroes of 3 classes, inflicts decreased defense on the enemy. So 3 classes is significant because it needs to be exactly 3. That's why I'm using Ainz here, because Ainz is attack imprint, and also Wukong, they're both warriors. So if you were doing something like this, it wouldn't work, because it's only 2 classes, and then if you did something like this also wouldn't work because this is 4 classes. So just make sure you have exactly 3 classes. You can have 4 units, they just need to be exactly 3 different classes. Let's take a look at everyone's stats, starting off with Wukong. For Wukong, he's just 65 crit chance since the boss has a negative 35 crit res, and then max out his crit damage and his attack, and give him a good amount of defense and HP. You want him to be pretty bulky because he will be tanking everything from the boss. There's going to be various bits of RNG with like crushing hits and potentially pushing you over thresholds for proccing Sigurds. So your bulk is pretty important just because you don't want to end up in a situation where you don't proc Sigurds and then the boss kills you because you didn't have the chance to heal up. But remember that it doesn't matter if you die, because even if you die, like let's say you have like a 1% chance of dying, if you die it doesn't really matter that much because you'll be able to just, you don't lose the energy, so it really doesn't matter. For his EE, we're using S3 damage because why not? And I think if you really are struggling to survive, you could pick up additional pen resistance so the S1 does less damage. And then Artifact, we'll be using Sigurds of course, so that we can heal up and also we get some free attack. Next up is Christy. Christy, I have her on her little weird build where she's just super high F-res with no bulk. I think even if you gave her bulk, you still wouldn't really have any issues with killing the boss. Like if you just wanted to run her on a normal build, I'll actually probably try that out and show a run with her on her normal build at the end. It'll just be a bit slower. I don't think you'll have any issues killing unless you have like a 500 speed Christy or something. I left Adamant Shield on her because you kind of don't want her to immediately die. You want to make sure she can survive an S2 from the boss and then die to the S1. And this is just because that way your Wukong doesn't have to tank the first S1. It helps a bit with his sustain. And it didn't matter with Farron because Farron has her little barrier, but it does matter when you have units that don't just take 0 damage. I think the boss has 120 effectiveness, by the way, because I got a debuff to 215, which was kind of crazy. So you need to aim for 220 effectiveness if you can. And then we have the 2 imprints here. You don't have to use 3 stars, you can use whatever. I don't think they necessarily have to, like... I mean, you could use other units if you want. Just make sure they don't, like, eat up all the Wukong turns. As long as they're contributing something, you could probably put actual units in here, but this is just for friendship farming, or if you don't want to keep a bunch of units geared. Just make sure they have exactly 3 classes, and let's check it out.
얘는 배로 주입해야지. 나를 우습게 봐. 얘는 배로 주입해.
Fast run, 11 turns and about 1.5 minutes, I think, on the dot, if anything. There was definitely a point where I got kind of close with my HP, but I think with my specific bulk, we just barely got under half HP, so we could heal back up. That's why I mentioned the bulk being pretty important. I think Lifesteal set could probably also work. With Lifesteal set, you'd always heal, no matter what, so you don't have to worry about Sigurd's timings. Let's swap the Christy builds and try out that as well. So here we swapped our Christy builds. This is the Christy that I normally use for Arena. It's just pretty much the basic, very, very high F-res, some bulk, and I give mine a little bit of speed, but you could also run her 0 speed and it would be fine. So I'm leaving her on the gear that I usually use on her, just to show that it works with like a standard Christy. And let's go in. I'm also going to leave her skills on, because I do typically leave her skills on for my quick battles. I think running her skills off is probably better, just because you have the chance to remove Sever. One thing I will mention is that when you're Christy S1s, she has like the 50-50 to remove Sever, or remove the Tentacle rather, versus critting and not removing it. If your runs are super close, like you kill with 1 turn left, or 2 turns, then you might want to make sure that you're not reliant on the Sever removals. Just because if you're like only going to one-shot rather, if she removes the Tentacles, then it's not really going to be a consistent one entry. But if you clear with like this clears with 5 turns left, then it's not going to be a problem whether or not your Christy crits every single attack. Also, how much your Christy gets crit is going to influence how long she survives, because the first time I ran this, she did not survive this long. That is also why we're going to clear with either 3 or 4 turns left, because Christy took that extra turn there. Yeah, we have 4 turns left. So do keep in mind those sources of RNG if you're running a properly geared Christy. That is it for the Wukong duo. This is very nice for people who just only have Wukong, I guess. Out of all of the options when you hit RC21, you do have a pretty easy setup waiting for you.